Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In podcast. This week's UFC Jacksonville. It's live on ABC, and I always love an early day of fights there. UFC gave us an absolute killer main event as well. We've got top 10 featherweights Josh Emmett versus Ilia Topuria there. And in the co-main event, Amanda Ribas taking on Maycee Barber. Right now, we're sitting at a total of 14 fights, and to be honest with you, it's a pretty solid card. The last time the UFC was in Jacksonville, the first live crowd, I believe, post-COVID, and they were nuts, showed up from the first fight. UFC's got them a nice, fun fight to kick off the night as well. Man, before we jump into things, the better fights and our favorite bets on the card, make sure to do us a quick favor. Like the video as always, sub to the channel if you haven't yet before. And in the comment section below, let us know who you guys have in the main event and co-main event. As far as casual cap goes, you managed to, I guess, weasel your way out of wearing it 2 weeks in a row. But I was able to walk away with a little bit of profit last week, but I was seconds away from having a very, very good night. I'll pass it over to you to recap how UFC Vegas 75 finished up for us.
Yeah, so since transitioning to this StreamYard podcast, we got to figure out how we're going to do the casual cap moving forward. But yes, I should be wearing it now. We'll look at your card first. Manuel Torres versus Nick LaMotta. You had 1.5 units on him at minus 180. I thought that he was going to get caught. I knew that I had some questions about him leaving his chin up in the air, and he did get touched, but was able to pull through, get a solid win right there, and cashed you just about a unit right there. Your second straight bet was on Nicholas Dalby as your dog. You thought about doubling down on it. It was a good read nonetheless. You had him plus 160 for a unit, and you ended up your straight pick section plus 2.43 units. Your biggest play on the night was the one that killed your night from having a good night from having a great night into just a good night. And it was your over 2.5 rounds in the main event and then under 2.5 rounds in the Tsarukyan Silva co-main event. And I don't think you were alone, man. Not many people thought that Joaquim Silva would be able to withstand Tsarukyan's pressure for that long. Right. So that was quite a surprise to a lot of people. You also had Costa inside the distance. Jimmy Flick looks like a shell of himself. I don't think that he has a future in the UFC. And then you finished off with a parlay of the over 1.5 rounds with the first fight on the card, Modestas Bukauskas versus Zach Pauga. And then you had the under 2.5 rounds in the Nicholas Motta versus Manuel Torres. You kind of talked on that being somewhat of a hedge for your straight bet on Manuel Torres. After watching that fight play out, I think the under 2.5 hits there at like a minus 1,000. So definitely a good play. You ended up the night plus 1.87 units with a 29% ROI. Definitely a good night. Looking over at my card, it's an easy one to accept because I didn't get screwed out of anything. I made 3 bad reads on my straight picks. At my first bet that you guys are seeing the Marvin Vettori for 2 units. When that fight started off, he landed those 2 straight lefts, and I thought that, I was like, oh, this is easy money right here. Made the perfect read. He's going to be able to do this for 25 minutes. That was not the case. Jared Cannonier proved that he still has some gas left in the tank, and definitely earned himself that victory there. The Lucas Almeida versus Pat Sabatini, I was debating on picking Almeida all week, and then I saw the weigh-ins, and I was like, yeah, you know what? I love the size advantage. That helps. So it pushed me over the edge and ended up being just an awful read. Lucas Almeida didn't have anything, and he's really going to have to patch up some holes if he does want to have a future in the UFC. Christian Quinones, another one that I feel like it was kind of forced. I didn't have many plays on the card, and as the fight night got closer, that line continued to drop. And I said if I could get under minus 150, I'd probably throw something on it. I ended up doing it, and Kyung Hoo Kang came out, did some work, looked really good there. So 3 just bad reads on the card. My best read on the card, only play that hit, was the fight ends by TKO in the Nicholas Motta versus Manuel Torres. No shot that ends any other way. I really like that play for what it's worth. It was minus 175, and I hit that for 1.75 units. I ended up the night going 1-3, but only minus 3 units on the night. For as poor as that is, minus 3 units is somewhat manageable. So I will take it with a grain of salt and just look to find some better plays on this card. We'll start off this card with our main event in the featherweight division, Ilia Topuria taking on Josh Emmett. And I mean, I don't think that we could put on a more exciting fight at 145 pounds than this one right here, man. Both guys known for their finishing ability. And with this 12-year age gap difference between the two, I think we're about to find out if this is going to be a passing of the torch type situation or a veteran still proving he has gas left in the tank for one last run, similar to last week with Marvin Vettori and Jared Cannonier.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not too hopeful that Emmett has what it takes at this point in his career to fight through this insanely talented young class of prospects coming up to earn his way back into this title picture. And I can't find it anywhere for the life of me, but I swear leading up into his Yair Rodriguez fight, he mentioned that he was kind of holding back some surgeries that he thinks that he'll do after his retirement. And that's just something that's not going to get better with time. So I don't like that look at all. Josh has also always been marketed as some huge KO artist. And while he does have the highlight reel to back that up, since re-entering that top 10 in 2019, he has struggled to find that knockout that came so easy earlier in his career. And, it hasn't stopped him from winning, but the idea that he's going to come out here and starch any of the top level 145ers at this point in his career, I think that that's kind of fizzled out. I mean, we've seen plenty of examples of fighters losing that competitive edge far before the age of 38. And especially in these lower weight classes, there's a lot of cause for concern around Emmett leading into this fight coming off of a loss. And then I just look at Ilia Topuria and I see a Josh Emmett 2.0 with a much higher ceiling at 26 years old. He's finishing all of his fights inside the octagon outside of that short notice debut against Yusuf Zalal. And he's looked like an absolute killer climbing his way up through the ranks. He's got the incredible power in his hands. He does a great job of mixing in those brutal body shots and his combinations. He brings a slick grappling game to the octagon that, hasn't been showcased much since that debut against Zalal. But I do expect him to lean on his wrestling much more in this fight than he has in his last few. Now, we have seen in Ilia's past few fights, specifically the Jai Herbert fight, that forward pressure and intensity that he brings can cause him some trouble with opponents that are willing to trade with him. And, Ilia's never been beaten. So I do think that in his mind right now, he feels invincible, like when he gets caught with a clean shot, I feel like it hurts his ego just as much as it hurts anything. And he lets his emotions get the best of him, and he wants to flip that switch into brawl mode and get that strike back. And while it's amazing to watch as a fan, I do think that arrogance that he carries with him, being this young undefeated stud, will end up getting him caught eventually. I'm just not sure that Josh Emmett is going to be the guy to do it, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think Ilia's got Josh covered everywhere. That cardio is still an unknown for Topuria, so it's tough to cap into this matchup. But, the way these two fight, I don't think that the judges' scorecards are going to be needed anyway. I think if they stay trading on the feet, Ilia has this 6 out of 10 times. I think if Ilia decides to mix in his grappling, which I do expect, he wins this 7 to 8 out of 10 times. Sadly, that line's right up where his line is sitting at minus 340. So that being said, I truly believe that Emmett could come out here and shock the world 20-25% of the time, flatlining him with a KO. But I don't really think that that's going to happen. So betting wise, I'm struggling to find an angle that I like. Interested to hear your thoughts on this one, P.
You won't get a whole lot of different thoughts from me, to be honest with you. And you talked about how just it's one of the most exciting fights to put on in the division right now. Talk about how this one, thank God, it's in front of a crowd because fireworks are written all over it. And with Emmett, you kind of touched on it as well. He's coming off a shot at gold, and so the UFC is not doing him any favors, matching them up with their young new stud of a prospect in Ilia Topuria. This guy was one who, leading up to that was extremely vocal about getting his title shot, about getting touching gold. And, now that you've come up short at 38 years old, knowing, like you said, you're going to have to go win 3 or 4 more in a row, likely beat 2 or 3 of these nice up-and-coming prospects. You just got to wonder where the head's at, where the motivation is as well. And to be honest with you, I think he's a pretty I don't want to say one-dimensional fighter, but he is kind of a one-dimensional fighter. He does train an alpha male. I guess he has some above-average wrestling. He used it against Yair to an extent, but Yair is somebody that everybody looks to take down. I don't see him having much success with his wrestling here. I see him resulting to the brawling boxing that he kind of always goes to. And while Topuria definitely doesn't offer the same type of dangers at kickboxing range of somebody like Yair. It does kind of give me some pause for concern on Ilia's minus 340 that he is going to have to close the distance and somewhat give Josh the potential fight that he wants here. But as far as skill set wise, I just think he's a bit better in everywhere. You talked about if he mixes in his grappling, he's a much bigger favorite. I mean, much bigger grappling upside here, much like higher to potential to finish with a submission on the mat. Anytime you see the guy taken down, he's right back to his feet. On the feet, I think he's a whole lot cleaner than Emmett. I think things come a whole lot straighter instead of the wide hooks around the side. I think he's a whole lot faster. Emmett's got the wide stance. I think Ilia's going to have a ton of success with his calf kick. And, you talked about him, kind of that arrogancy getting him in trouble with Jai Herbert. One, Josh Emmett's not throwing a high kick like that mid combination. Two, it shows me the dude has a fucking chin for one, to even really just be set down on your butt and be right back up. It was quite impressive. It shows me that he does have durability in him. I love that he's, compared to Josh, I think Josh is a much more like a headhunter, home run shot kind of guy where Ilia, you see it in the Jai Herbert, the Damon Jackson. It's 2-3 punch combination, start switching levels to the body. And I think that body work could be a big factor here. It was a kick for Yair, but it caused Emmett a lot of issues, in that fight. And, Emmett looks like a guy who cuts a whole lot of weight and looks a little weak around the midsection to me, just to be honest with you. The biggest elephant in the room for Ilia Topuria is his ability to go a hard 5 if needed, because Josh Emmett has honestly shown me time and time again, he's one of the toughest guys on the roster, shown me he can go a hard 5 with somebody like Cater. Ilia shown me he can potentially have weight cutting issues to 145 as well. So the possibility of the line being wide is there at this point, but Josh isn't at the point in his career that I'm trying to stand in front of Ilia Topuria. So I'm kind of struggling to find any action on the main event myself. But it's a pretty easy side to the Ilia Topuria for me as well. Co-main event wise, Amanda Ribas versus Maycee Barber, women's flyweight. I guess ranking wise, they probably deserve the co-main event slot, but there's so much more exciting fights on the card, just being honest, and I think everybody knows that. With Ribas, definitely holds a big competition edge. This girl's fought a ton of top girls at flyweight. The wins over Verna and Mackenzie Dern are both aging well, and even in the losses to Chuk and Marina, she's has her moments. The girl's got decent footwork and a good jab. The one knock on her is just for a female fighter, the girl could be considered chinny. She's been chin checked a couple times, knocked out a couple times, and Maycee is considered a physical girl at times. But just being honest with you, I haven't seen that physicality of Maycee translate so much since she's moved up to flyweight, and it kind of brings me around to the grappling point here, is that I think Amanda Ribas is just twice the grappler Maycee Barber. When she gets a hold of her, she's going to find massive success. Maycee, watching tape back, she's given up takedowns, simple clinch, just trip takedowns in almost every single fight. Jessica Eye is holding this girl up against the cage the entire fight. And to be honest with you, I thought it live. I thought it watching it back this week. KGB Lee and Miranda Maverick both, I thought, beat this girl. I don't think she should be on the win streak that she's on. But for some reason, the UFC and the judges just seem to like her for some reason. But Ribas has also landed one takedown in every single one of her UFC fights. So I can almost trust her, to go to it here if to the success that I think she's going to have. And just how, Maycee Barber coming through the ranks, even at 115, the girl was finishing everybody. And since moving up to flyweight, I think the physicality being part of it, a lot of these finishes have stopped. And even with the chin issues of Amanda Ribas here, I think it's kind of silly to bet on a women's TKO. I don't know how often that truly happens, even with the combination that you throw in of Amanda's chin here. So I'm kind of stuck in a position right now because I truly favor Ribas to win this fight at a pretty decent clip. I've just kind of seen the line get away from me. We've been killed laying women's chalk multiple times, and again, the UFC wants to push Barber for some reason. So I'm likely going to sit the co-main event out as well. But I think Amanda Ribas has all the tools to win the fight. Man, any thoughts on it?
Yeah, no, I mirror a lot of what you're saying. When you talk about Rebus, you're having to lay a heavy price tag on her. And like you said, whether you like it or not, you have to cap in the fact that the UFC is pushing for Barber, like it how many times can it happen before that becomes part of your capping? I do like this fight. I feel like Maycee, like you touched on, she's kind of dodged a few bullets, but I do think that she's found an opponent in Rebus who's really going to push her to either step up that level of competition or fold under the pressure. Rebus, excellent prospect and really coming into her own here at flyweight, where I do think that she feels much stronger and looks to be her new home moving forward. Even when she made her flyweight return against Caitlin Chukagian, I did feel like you know throwing her in there against the number one contender in the division was quite a huge step up. But after that fight, I do think that she proved she deserves to be ranked among the upper echelon of that division. With Maycee, I can't feel but get the feeling that I'm gypped every single time she leaves the octagon, and I don't know if it's from a bias that I formed before, when her hype train got derailed by Roxy, or it's the split decisions that she keeps eking out. But I don't really have much faith in her as a future title holder. She came into the octagon with that raw ability to overwhelm girls with her power and athleticism. And since she's hit, some of the more well-rounded girls of the division, it does seem that she's struggled to develop the technical side of her game that's needed to get past some of the girls who have solid bases in everything. Here against Ribas, I think she's got a really tough job in front of her. Ribas is sporting a nearly 90% takedown defense, which in my head translates to a standing fight if Ribas chooses. And if that's the case, I do think that Ribas holds a clear technical striking edge. Where I do think that Maycee could take advantage is that striking defense you touched on of Ribas. While she does have that great striking, she does struggle getting her head off the center line. And when Maycee is in range and not shadow boxing 5 feet out, she does throw with a ton of power. So it could definitely be a good fight, especially if Hebus decides to make it a fun fight by keeping it standing on the feet. But I do expect Hebus to win at a pretty high clip here as well. You touched on Hebus getting a takedown in all of her fights. Maycee Barber has given a takedown in all 4 of her wins that she's currently on. So I do expect Hebus to wind up on top here, or just point her out to an easy decision win. I do expect her to get the nod on Saturday. Like you said, maybe not deserving of the co-main event, but a good fight nonetheless, for sure. So for my fight of the night, oddly enough, I'm sticking with the women here. I went with Tabitha Ricci versus Gillian Robertson at strawweight. Both girls, 38 years old. Gillian with quite a few more UFC fights, this one making her 15th inside the octagon. And even though Robertson has certainly faced a higher level of competition, Ricci, I think she's far from green. With her extensive background in combat sports and having also started her MMA career all the way back in 2013, I do think that she has quite a bit of experience, even though her record might not show it. Outside of Ricci's debut, she's really been nothing short of impressive. She's got a nice 3-fight win streak going, earning her first finish by securing that armbar over the crafty veteran and Jessica Panay. And, after watching that fight, I learned my lesson trying to fade her. I initially thought that she lacked the size to be successful in the UFC, but I think that opinion was formed when she came up against Firo. And, she just looked so small in that matchup that it was tough to shake that image, So either way, I think that she's got an excellent BJJ base, and if she can effectively land takedowns here, I do think that she's going to be able to ward off the attacks coming from Gillian off of her back. Gillian is someone who over the course of her career has really relied on getting the fight to the mat by any means necessary to find success. And sometimes that comes to her detriment. And I think that here she's got a pretty tough matchup. While Robertson has shown some pretty decent offensive wrestling, I do think that she's going to find it difficult to get in on the hips of somebody as small and as technical as Ricci is here. If the fight does manage to stay on the feet, I expect it to be close, but I do give the edge to Ricci here. Neither girl extremely technical with their stand-up, but I do expect Tabitha to have an edge with her Muay Thai background. Honestly, I see Ricci winning this fight at a pretty decent clip. The only thing that's holding me back is the size of Robertson, and having proven that she can hang with some of the bigger girls at flyweight in the past, I think having a significant size and height advantage here, it could translate to her winning some of the exchanges on the feet, simply by being the longer fighter. And if that is the case, I do think we're in for an excellent scrap, which is why I've made this my fight to watch. So I think we're in for a really good fight, and I'm not really sure how I'm going to pick it. If weigh-ins happen and Ricci doesn't look like she's giving up significant size, I might find even a spot on Tabitha here on Saturday.
I like it, man. I see a lot of action on both sides online. I don't know if they're simping or if they really got a strong read on it. I don't really have it, to be honest with you, man. I think the girls match up pretty similar. I think they both would consider themselves grapplers first. I think they both have good jiu-jitsu. One has a little bit better jiu-jitsu in Tabitha Ricci here. And I think she's also, like you said, going to be the bit better striker. And you do see grapplers oftentimes just get nullified and start striking, and if that's the case, I do kind of favor Tabitha Ricci, who's a little bit more technical, like you said, with the striking, the boxing, a little bit faster, just a better athlete in general, and too. But size does mean a lot in women's MMA. We've learned that time and time again.
Everything.
And I think the move down for Gillian is going to be huge. You talked about she fought very physical girls, man, up at flyweight. Miranda Maverick, Talia Santos, and coming down, I thought the performance over Pierre Rodriguez was a pretty good one. She's pretty much spent her entire UFC career in the UFC, pretty much just grinding, getting better, added a strong resume, and she's a pretty good finisher for the women's division. But there are times where I feel like, she's kind of sub or bust, and if she can't find success getting on top and finding the submission, then she doesn't really have much left for you. But that size could, like you said, be a little bit longer on the feet, man. It could win her a few transition scrambles on the mat, just kind of wind up, on top in Tabitha's guard. I don't personally have any interest in this fight. I don't want to force a bet out of myself, but I do side with Tabitha Ricci to get an official pick out of myself. As far as fight for me, this is the fight that I believe the UFC is keeping. Looks like Tapology got it first fight of the night. We got Cody Brundage taking on Sedriques Dumas, and hopefully sets the crowd on fire right out the gates, man. Brundage stepping in on short notice for what I think is a pretty good fight for him to win. I do have 1.5 units on Brundage, but I got it at minus 115, and that number has since swelled. At one point, I saw minus 220 down to like minus 180 and stuff now. So, we're talking 10 to 15% loss in value. Personally, I would say lay off at this point on the Cody Brundage side. I have him about a 58 to 60% here. I think if the guy proactively grapples early, he could look like a bigger favorite. He trains with Josh Frim. They've game planned for this guy before. I think he knows it's coming off 2 stoppage losses. I think he knows it's a good fight for himself to potentially get back on track. You look at the guy's 2 losses, and Mikhailo Lazaychek, we're talking about a guy who spent his career at light heavyweight who's just an absolute monster in round 1. And, getting submitted by Rodolfo Vieira is never a bad look at all, but it kind of brings me to the possibility of this guy having some bad fight IQ, or maybe it's just a momentary lapse of, in judgment, because typically it's not a concern. But, he lands a good shot on Rodolfo Vieira and drops him. I think it was in round 2, into round 1, follows him down to the mat. And, 2 minutes later, he finds himself in an arm triangle getting submitted. So it's like, I don't think he has near that concern here with Sedriques Dumas, but it is, potentially the guy doesn't have the best fight IQ in the world is what I'm trying to say. Dumas, he's a better athlete. The guy's long. He's got a good kicking game. I'm not necessarily a fan of his striking. He has a good calf kick, but he doesn't really set things up in my opinion. Low-level competition. Looking online, he kind of, it looks like he trained at Fusion Excel with Phil Rowe, but I just see one picture there. I see a whole lot more pictures of him in a small gym in Pensacola, training with not so good-looking training partners as I sent you online. We've seen the out-of-octagon issues. It just that brings me to question the guy's just overall commitment to it. But last time out, he came in as an undefeated fighter, and a lot of times maybe that's just a learning experience for you. The gas tank didn't look too good. Maybe you move forward going up, but does kind of bring me to another point that, man, it looked like to me after Josh Frimm hit that ridiculous hip toss on him, it kind of looked like he gave up to me, man. It looked like when he got held against the fence, he didn't really try to defend the choke. He quit trying to work back to his feet, and he kind of looked like he had a little bit of quit in him, man. So I do got Cody Brundage by stoppage here, and I do have the under 2.5 parlayed as well. I think this is an incredible fight. You on either side?
Yeah, I might end up talking about one of the sides actually later on in the podcast. So I'll keep that to myself. But no, I do think that it's an excellent fight to highlight for sure. There's no way that this sees the judges' scorecards, whether it be from Cedric quitting or Cody Brundage making a IQ error. Yeah. So excellent fight to showcase for sure. Now we move on to my fighter of the podcast, and I'm going with the turd man, Wellington Turman, man. I knew Wellington was young, but the fact that he's still only 26 is mind-blowing to me, man. It feels like he's already had a good run in the UFC, Very up and down success since entering the organization, going 3-4 in his fights under the UFC banner. And I chose Wellington as my fighter to watch because he is attempting to move down a weight class from middleweight and look for success among the 170 pounders in the UFC. Sadly, he drew a pretty tough first matchup for his UFC welterweight debut against Randy Brown. Honestly, I think it's fair to say that he should be thankful for even getting another chance, and he might have Glover Teixeira to thank for that. Glover is his main training partner and coach. It seems as if Glover has more faith than anybody that Turman has potential to make a name for himself. Turman, like his coach, is known for his ground skills. He has a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and about half of his wins come by submission. I actually, wouldn't doubt if the Andre Petroski loss that he had and Petroski's ability to ragdoll him at 185 pounds sparked his decision to move down to this weight class. The reason why it came as such a shock to me that he was doing that was rarely do you see a fighter this young make a jump up a weight class for 10 consecutive fights and it not be a permanent move. Usually it's like Chase Hooper or Darren Till come to mind where they just get older and their bodies, it's the natural progression of things for them to move up in weight. But for what it's worth, Wellington looks like cutting the extra 15 pounds online was nothing for him. He looks great. Randy Brown, especially after another top loss to a top level guy, and his last time out, after going on that little win streak and then losing another one, he's kind of solidified himself as a journeyman. Offering a really fun, unique style that can be difficult for fighters, especially if they struggle getting inside the range. I think Turman is doomed if he tries to keep this fight on the feet with the movement of Brown. But if he does close the distance and find himself on top of Brown, I do think that he could cause a ton of problems for him and truly make a statement in this new weight class, which is why he's my fighter to watch.
Yeah, we see the fight in similar regards here. Top time for Wellington Turman's there, calf kick for Wellington Turman's there. Overall power advantage, and then you just throw in the fact that Randy Brown never covers his price tag as a big favorite. The guy is constantly fighting to a very close fight, even showboating at times, So I wouldn't lay chalk on Randy Brown. And if Wellington Turman was not cutting 15 pounds, I'd be way more inclined to look at him as an underdog as well. Fighter for me, Trevor Peek, no other than our Tennessee boy. Can't talk about the card, not bring the guy up. If the UFC knew anything about what they're doing, this guy would be on the main card on Saturday live for everybody to see. Might be one of the worst fighters skill set wise on the roster, truly. But he is one of the most exciting fighters. And as they say, he's got that dog in him, and I really hope that they don't do what they did to somebody like a Mike Perry, like Nate Land, where, like you brought up, there's no need to rush this guy if he does string together 3 or 4 wins. Give him fun matchups. Don't rush him and lose your stock in him. This guy got a $50K bonus the last time out, training full time now. comes forward, just forces a dogfight out of every one of his opponents where, he's just tougher than you, man. The guy's got heart for days. He's hard to put away. The Contender Series shot, Malik Lewis is he is dogging on him, man, and he's just refusing to go away. And you take him down, he refuses to be held down. It isn't even the most untechnical things as well. He's working his way back to the cage. He's digging underhooks. In the last fight against Eric Gonzalez, he even tries for a Kimura from the bottom that he ends up turning into an armbar that gets him back to his feet. Like he's not lost, man. But if the UFC is not careful with him and they do move him up to it quick, I think the guy does have potential to get slept pretty badly. And I do think a good wrestler could cause him some big issues. Short notice replacement, Chepe Mariscal, probably a harder opponent than he originally had, to be honest with you. But coming up a weight class, being TKO'd before, I'm not interested in backing him as an underdog anymore. I think he's just liable to get hit on the feet and TKO'd pretty quickly. And I think on short notice up a weight class, if he tries to wrestle Trevor for too long, he's going to slow himself down and eventually get TKO'd again, man. But this fight has all the reasons in the world to watch it. Trevor Peek's my fighter you can't miss this weekend, though.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. Trevor being undefeated, there's a lot of unknowns, and finishing all of his fights, there's a lot of unanswered questions. So definitely somebody that you got to keep an eye out on. It'll be tough for me not to find a bet on him just coming out of Tennessee, man. And I have bet him in the past, and it's a wild ride and fun. So just from a degenerate standpoint, it's a good time betting on Trevor.
I'll never forget in the Contender Series fight when it goes to the corner after round one, you say, Trevor's got him right where he wants him. It's just perfect. It's exact representation of how he fights, man. He can Homer Simpson a lot of these wins going forward.
Very much so. And I think, like you touched on, if it wasn't that Chepe wasn't a true featherweight, I think that he'd have more of a shot here. But you talked about you hope that the UFC doesn't give him, too hard of a road to the top. He's a 155, man. This is his bottom of the barrel right here is Chepe, and he's at Pick'em. So really, I don't think that there's many fights in the future that are going to be good matchups for Trevor, but hopefully it makes them all exciting. And I don't know, great fighter to watch for sure. So for my underdog, I was kind of back and forth between a few guys. I talked about Turman enough that I'm not going to make him my underdog. I'll pick somebody else, but I do think that Turman has a really good chance to win. My underdog is going to be Sedriques Dumas, and I'm just going to rattle off a couple of reasons. First off, this is a really low level fight, and for the line to flip this much, I think that there is just automatically some good value on Sedriques Dumas. This is a toss-up fight. You talked about Cody coming into this fight on short notice. This is in Dumas's backyard. Dumas is a fast starter, and when Cody loses, he loses quickly. He gets caught up in the moment, makes a bad decision, and Sedriques Dumas being athletic enough to wrap up a guillotine and sell out for it is something that I think that he's rode on a couple times in his career. Him just being so much stronger and built for fighting.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he's relied on a lot of his natural athleticism. Now, all that being said, Cody does have the technical side of this locked up, but that doesn't mean that he's going to use it by any means. This is Cody's first time ever being a favorite in the UFC. And I don't think that I want to trust him with a favorite price tag. Sedriques Dumas, like I said, I just think that it's an odd signing for the UFC to not give him fights that he should be winning. So I do think that this is one of the most winnable fights for him here. So he's my underdog of the week, although putting your hard-earned money on Sedriques Dumas is a tough sell for anybody, man.
Yeah, your prop section doesn't come from this fight, does it?
No. All
right. I think fight ends by sub here is super sneaky. Whatever the line is, I haven't looked at it, but you talked about Dumas's guillotine. I think it's going to be there with Brundage potentially forcing the grappling, but there's a world where Brundage gets him on the mat and just runs through him and finds the easy submission himself. So I haven't looked at the line, but I think that's a sneaky play on that fight. Sneaky way that it hits the under. Underdog for myself. I really did struggle to pick one that, and I probably likely won't have any action. But I do think the line's a bit inaccurate on the Jamal Emmers and Jack Jenkins side. You can get Jack Jenkins out there at plus 180, and I do think it could just be a little bit closer. You know, he doesn't have the experience of Emmers, who, to be honest with you, man, has fought good competition in the UFC and on the regional scene prior. But it's hard for me to get to the 70% here on Emmers. Like, Jenkins is a tough dude. And I don't think Emmers is going to finish him. So if you can fight to a close decision, still a round or something, that's potentially all I can ask out of a plus 180. So to also see areas where he's good in the clinch and just strong against the fence, I think he's, again, the guy with more power, the one who's more likely to finish the fight. He's got nasty leg kicks, and I expect the leg kicks to really find the home of the legs of Jamal. And, he is a taller, lanky guy, and, not been an issue for him in the past, but Jenkins slams him in there, man. And if he lands a few, I could see it changing this fight a little bit. So, I have seen some people out there in Emmers, and it's understandable when you look at the guy's resume and his athleticism and stuff. But to me, he's not going to finish Jack. And I think there's potentially, real good chance this goes to the scorecards, and we're looking at some sketchy scorecards. So not as confident in Jack Jenkins as I was Nick Dalby last week, but he is going to be my underdog this week, man.
Nice. All right, I just got a question for you. When an undefeated prospect is tearing through people and they do finally come up to somebody who gives them a good fight, what happens in those fights?
Typically get the vet lesson.
Get the vet. It goes to decision, right? Those vets are able to drag out the fights longer.
Mm-hmm.
And so my prop of the week is something that I hate even saying, but it's Chepe by decision at plus 600. It's just one of these things where Trevor has been able to just mollywop everybody in front of him, but I do question the level of talent that he's facing on the Tennessee regional scene, if I'm being completely honest. Yeah, right. So, I just feel like it's a really sneaky play. I'm looking at possibly playing Trevor Peak straight up for a couple units and then playing a unit on the Chepe by decision, because I do think that if Trevor is going to get that vet lesson, he's tough enough to withstand anything a 145er can throw at him. And, it might just be him finally running into somebody who will have a little bit more of that technical side that can draw out a fight. That might be like his Achilles heel. So Chepe by decision at plus 600 is my play. I'm not happy about it. It fucking hurts to play it, but I do already have it played, and I'll probably end up locking it in sometime this week.
Well, I know a couple weeks ago the podcast came down to the prop section, and it looked like it might be happening again this week, because we're going to go with Trevor Peak versus.
Oh, hey, you just cut out. Re-say it if you can.
So parlayed the under 2.5 there.
Hey, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Restart this section for you.
I got you. So with Peak and Mariscal, I got it under 1.5 at minus 155, and so there's very well potential that our cards, could come to split here. But I got one unit riding on it, and I also parlayed the under 2.5. So Trevor losing by decision here is going to kill my night. But win or lose for him, man. Chepe Mariscal by decision at plus 600. I think the number's right, because I think Trevor Peak's fights finish around an 80 to 85% clip, just the way he fights.
Winning, yes.
And personally, I look at the under 1.5, and I think it should hit around 65 to 70% of the time. I think that line could be around minus 200. The guy's strong as an ox. He's definitely at a technical disadvantage on the mat, but he's so strong, man, that, Chepe, I don't know how long he's, going to maintain the top time. I feel like Trevor's going to be able to get back to his feet and eventually tire him out on short notice, but he's definitely going to have his openings, man. The one time Pete did go over 1.5, it's in the Malik Lewis fight, and Malik Lewis whooped his ass in round 1. It could have been stopped. And Trevor Peak is on top of him, raining down elbows, and the ref stops at like 5 or 6 seconds over the 1.5 range. So Trevor Peak knows nothing but under 1.5, and I hope nothing changes.
And yeah, for the Chepe thing, like I don't see a world where Chepe is finishing Trevor Peak.
I'm
So
with you.
in the ways that Chepe wins it, he only has to like it's a under 14.5% implied odds that he gets the decision. And I
Yeah.
think he wins a decision like a quarter of the time here, you know?
Yeah, nice value on it.
Um, what are we at here?
Best bet.
The best bet of the card. Sheesh, man. This is a tough one. This is a really tough one. I think I'm gonna let you take it, and then I'm gonna pick back up.
All right. Best bet for me is going to be Neil Magny. I did get in at the minus 150. He's up to minus 175, but I do think it's a potential buy low spot for Magny, and it's one that I've bet him every single time the UFC does this for him. Every time they give him a step down in competition against Li Jingliang, Max Griffin, Rocco Martin, D-Rod, I'm cashing on Neil Magny. The guy's fought the who's who of the welterweight division, and in this particular matchup against Phil Rowe, you can kind of say Neil Magny's kind of getting his size matched for the first time, but this is the first time the young prospect in Phil Rowe, who's got the much shorter amount of fights, is going to see someone who matches him in size, and it's going to take away that big advantage. He really what's the kryptonite to Neil Magny? The guy's last few losses, they come to talented grapplers like Michael Chiesa, Gilbert Burns, and Shavkat. And the last time he was stopped on the feet was Santiago Ponzinibbio 5 years ago, a prime Santiago on like a 7-fight win streak and stuff. So Neil Mag is not getting finished, but by high-level fighters. When I watch Rowe, I see a guy who constantly gets his back stuck on the fence, someone who gives up ground. And that's where Neil Magny is going to look to take this fight. He loves to force the cage control. So if you're just going to put your back there for him, he's going to take you there. He's going to beat you up in the clinch. He's going to drain your gas tank. Rowe's been taken down over and over again, even with the generous run of opponents. I think Neil Magny could find success digging the underhooks, taking him down, tripping him down to the mat. When I look at who Phil Rowe's beaten, Jason Witt can't take a gust of wind on the chin anymore. Koski and Nico Koski straight gassed out after taking him down a whole bunch. And then the third round, I mean, Nico is all over Phil Rowe and literally takes one step back and is dog tired and then just can't even take a shot anymore, man. And I don't think you have to worry about those cardio issues with Neil Magny whatsoever. You throw in Phil Rowe's weight cutting issues, he's just going to get behind on activity and volume with Neil Magny here. So, like always, even when you lay some chalk on him, you do know it's probably going to be by decision. The D-Rod was kind of an anomaly there in the third round. But I think this is too big of a step up for Phil Rowe right now, and I got Magny to take a pretty clear-cut decision.
I like the Magny play. I'm looking, it's completely against what you just said, but I'm looking at actually playing him inside the distance. There's a pretty good number floating around, like plus 450 or something, 425. Yeah. And I think it's a huge step up for Rowe, and he's fighting somebody who might put him into some tricky positions. Magny might give him the vet lesson. So
good stuff.
Definitely like it as the best bet. For my best bet, man, it's difficult not to make it a prop. So just straight best bet. I think Tabitha Ricci has Gillian Robertson covered. I do think that she's the much better fighter. Like I said, it's going to take seeing her on weigh-in days and face-offs to just not be at like a huge size disadvantage. But I don't see how I don't find a play on Tabitha Ricci here. I really do give her the edge everywhere, even in looks. So
most definitely in looks.
Most definitely in looks. So yeah, I'll pick Tabitha Ricci here as my best bet.
Nice.
Moving on to our quick pick section of the night. We'll start off with a disagreement, I believe. Yeah. Right, first fight of the night. Middleweight Cody Brundage taking on Sedriques Dumas. I'll be taking SD Dumas.
I do got Cody Brundage, but I do want to reiterate the fact that I got him at a basically pick 'em price tag at like a 52, 53% or something, So I'm not one of these people out here laying almost 2-1 on Brundage and would never be that. But I do hope he comes through for me. And I think it's a fun fight to kick off the night. And then yet again, they always do this early in the card for the Japan crowd. We got Tattoo Tyra taking on Clinton Rodriguez. I'm going to go with Tyra. You said it's plus EV playing this probably in flyweights going, all the time. But I think the over 1.5 at minus 165 is a decent look here. I think they're both good prospects. And I think if Tatsuro does find the submission finish, it's going to be later after we see Klitzen kind of slow down. So I think that hits the one over 1.5 at a decent clip. But Tyra's the pick for sure.
Yeah, Tyra's definitely the pick. And yeah, the only way that I see that not happening is if Tyra comes out here and walks through Klitzen Rodriguez, which I've heard plenty of takes to tell me that that's not going to happen. So, I've got Tyra here, but it might not be as easy as the opening odds suggested, at least at minus 400. We go up to featherweight where we see Jamal Emmers taking on Jack Jenkins. I agree that there's some things that, Jack Jenkins can get those leg kicks working. He is live as could be for an underdog, but I do think that Jamal Emmers is the more well-rounded, more proven guy. I'm going to fall back on Emmers here, dude.
Yeah, and it's I don't know if I actually find myself playing Jack Jenkins. It's just one of those where I think if I could just play out a little bit closer than plus 185 suggest. So for the purposes of the podcast, I'll take my underdog and Jack Jenkins. Moving on up, please send it up the card by Saturday, man. Trevor Peek taking on Chepe Mariscal, Tennessee boy, first round knockout.
Yeah, I'm going for Trevor Peek as well. I think that he could just overwhelm this little guy early, and it'd be nice if he could get that dub. It does extend. I've got some coverage, but I'm going for Trevor Peek. Don't get that don't get it twisted. Yeah, right. Moving down to flyweight, Zhalgas Zhumagulov finally versus Joshua Van. I can't trust Zhalgas at this price tag. Last week he was my best bet. I had him at minus 150 and still felt a little gross about it, but at minus 190, it was a pretty easy layoff spot. So even though this might even be an easier matchup for him, it's tough. I can't find myself laying 2-1 on Zhalgas with his past performances. So Zhalgas is the pick.
Yeah, you better not ever lay 2-1 on Zhalgas Zhumagulov. I think he's the pick though, but I'll never do that. That's for sure. He's always somebody I'm looking to fade. Tabitha Ricci versus Gillian Robertson. Not the same conviction as you, but Tabitha Ricci's my pick as well.
Yeah, Tabitha Ricci's the pick, especially if she looks like she sizes up well against Gillian. Moving up, Mateusz Rebecki versus Loik Radzhabov. I'm going Mateusz Rebecki.
Yeah, same side for me, and this is the one that I might tape a little bit more tonight, tomorrow, or something before the fights, because I think there might still be some value on the Rebecki line. I think the guy's got the superior gas tank and could just make it a dirty, grinding fight that Loik just kind of can't keep up with. I don't know. Loik's just kind of got that competition and resume edge on him. It's kind of one of the things keeping me off.
Loik also, Tajikistan, you don't want to bet against them right now. I know it sounds crazy, but you don't.
Yeah, they do have a couple good fighters coming through the ranking right now. Mm-hmm. Randy Brown, Wellington Turman. I'm going to side with Randy Brown because there's obvious red flags around Turman, but I don't know. If this was like at 180 or 178,
it wasn't 15 whole pounds.
Yeah, right. I might take Turman, but for a guy who's been knocked out bad in the past, and you talked about it. Typically, you're not 26 years old switching weight classes and stuff.
10 fights he moved up to middleweight.
So it seems like he's searching for answers a little bit. I don't like to back that. Randy Brown's going to be the pick.
Wellington Turman's the pick for me, man. I think he could look minus 400 if he gets this fight to the mat quick. I think that he'll clear strength advantage. So that's kind of what I'm expecting to see here is if he is able to get the fight to the mat. Randy Brown has never been somebody who physically is impressive with his strength. But if he is able to circle around that octagon, he could look like the minus 250 that he is. Wellington Turman's the pick for me, though. I think he'll find him. And Glover's somebody I like taking under his wing and, all that good stuff. I like it. Staying in the same weight class, Neil Magny versus Phil Rowe. I share a lot of the same opinion as you. I think Neil Magny's the side here. Decision's probably how it's going to get done, but I do think that this is a huge step up for Rowe, and Magny doesn't get finishes ever, so it's kind of a sneaky play. I think that he could do it here.
Yeah, and Phil Rose doesn't have the best gas tank either, so Magny turns it up on him, finishes live, and if he didn't make me sweat the decision, that would be awesome. Neil Magny for the pick and the prelim headliner. Starting off the co-main, Brendan Allen, Bruno Silva, killer fight, one that I'm thinking about betting the under in just because it's a complete clash of styles, man, and Brendan Allen can get knocked out pretty damn easily, shown in the past, and Bruno Silva, I believe, has about 6 submission losses or something like that on his record, so that's minus 180. I don't know if it's a trap, I'm kind of torn. It almost seems like a trap to me. I'm going to go Brendan Allen, tempted on the under 2.5.
Yeah, Bruno Silva was the dog I was considering. I just, I don't have much faith in Allen. I think even though he's on this 4-fight winning streak, he's one of the more unpredictable fighters, and I really hate laying juice on him. So Allen will be the pick here. I think that he has the higher ceiling for sure at this point in their career. So I'll take Allen, but I wouldn't actually play it. This one's interesting right here. David Onama versus Gabriel Santos. I think I'm on Onama. And I know that sounds crazy. I should have made him my dog. I just haven't looked at this fight enough. But I do think Onama just drew a couple of really tough guys. Like Nate Landwehr, for example. He, if he finishes that fight early, he looks like a minus 1,000. We're not really talking about him like this, So yeah. I think David Onama is a whole lot better than what they're giving him credit for. I saw somebody with a plus 285 ticket.
I was just about to say, did you get plus 285
on David Onama? And if I could have gotten those odds, you bet your sweet ass there would be a unit on him right now. He's at plus 190 right now. I think if I could get a 2 in front of that number, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable, and I might could find me a play on Onama.
Man, Gabriel Santos does get hit, and Onama does have some power, but I do think Onama can get taken down by Gabriel Santos at the same time. There's always that chance because we've seen it time and time again where these debutantes come in and just kind of, overperform, like Victor Henry in Barcelos' first fight, just best performance of his career. Gabriel Santos flying over to London on short notice. Maybe it's the best performance we're ever going to get out of him, and I just don't know. So I have laid off this fight, but to make it interesting, I'll side with the other side, and Gabriel Santos. Low-level heavyweights on the main card. UFC can't help themselves, man. Justin Tafa versus Austin Lane. I do want to mention one thing. It is, I guess, karma's the word for it. Greg Hardy knocking out Austin Lane on the Contender Series, and now look at these guys' careers. Greg Hardy is just knocked out 3 or 4 fights in a row. You got Austin Lane making his UFC debut. It's bittersweet, man. I do think he might be a little bit too reckless. I think he's going to rush things and get caught by Justin Tafa, though. He's definitely a superior athlete in size, but I think I got to side with Justin Tafa.
I don't know, man. This is really tough.
Yeah, don't lay juice on Tafa.
Right. And I hate to boil anything that's not a women's fight down to sheer size, but I mean, it is something you got to cap into this one. And Justin Tafa has never really been that great. He's always been somebody who doesn't have very many fights. The fights that he does have, they're not entirely impressive, or they surely don't last very long. So you don't get to see like a well-rounded skill set.
He did get outstruck for 3 rounds by Vandera too.
Dude. I mean, yeah, you're asking for it. You deserve everything coming to you if you laid the juice on Tafa. I'll pick him, but it's I would not be playing anything on this fight for sure. Moving up to the co-main event, Amanda Ribas taking on Maycee Barber. I got Amanda Ribas. I wish that I could find a way to play her that's not laying 2-1 on her money line, but I'm not sure. I might just lay off of this one as well. Amanda Ribas is the pick, though. Maybe put her in a parlay or something, right?
Yeah, Amanda Ribas is the pick for me. I told you earlier in the week I was thinking about making like a super nice parlay with these people like Amanda Ribas minus 190, Rebetsky minus 140, just to get like a real nice number out of it to try to hit a home run. Because I do want to find a way to play Ribas like you, man. I do think she's the clear side here. I looked at a decision plus 100. Even that's just not tempting enough for me, man. But Amanda Ribas is going to be the pick. And to the main event, man, Josh Emmett versus Ilia Topuria. I mean, this is one of the better fights, like you said, the UFC featherweight division could have put together at this time. And I think Ilia Topuria is on the fast track to being a top 5 featherweight. I don't know if he gets past like the Max Holloways of the world, the Volkanovskis or something, but I do think he's going to get through Josh Emmett on Saturday.
Yep, I totally agree, man. I think that it could be a super interesting fight, especially if Josh is able to clip him early. I'd love to see just like that bull red mentality from Ilia Topuria and him go straight berserker mode with Josh Emmett. I think that'd be guaranteed fireworks. So looking forward to it on Saturday, and I'm picking Ilia Topuria as well.
Nice, man. It's 14 total fights. We've talked the best ones. We've talked our favorite bets on the card, as always. Hopefully they stay together, man, because it's a pretty solid showing, to be honest with you, in Jacksonville on Saturday. Excited for them. Prelims start at 11:30 Eastern time in the morning. Love us some day fights, and be back next week to break down next week's card, give you guys some bets.
Peace.